Hey everybody, it's Maria, and today I'm going to be talking about Hamilton. I'm a little bit sweaty because I just mowed the lawn, but my little girl is still asleep, so I'm going to see if I can squeeze this in before she wakes up. I know some of you are not huge Hamilton fans, and that's fine. I hope you stick with me for the video anyway, just to make my case, because I really do think everybody should give it a chance, especially if you're living in the States. Now, first up, you should know, I do not like to like things when they're popular. Like, I really, really hate it. It means that sometimes I wait too long to read books, like Harry Potter or The Hunger Games. It means that sometimes I just miss out on things because I either like to be ahead of the curve or after the curve. I'm getting better about it. But Hamilton is something that I initially thought, I was like, oh my gosh, what is the hype? Why is everybody talking about this thing? And then I heard the Hamilton mixtape. It was available through the library, so I thought, oh, I'll give it a chance. And the mixtape, for those of you who don't know, is covers and remixes, some lyrics changed up of some of the more popular songs from Hamilton. And I just like ate it up, especially the Immigrants Get the Job Done song. It was just totally on repeat all the time. I checked it out so many times. And then I thought, you know, I probably should try and listen to the original. So I ended up borrowing that as well, and I just fell in love. I talked to my husband about it, and he had actually been listening and not talked to me about it, thought it was great. And we both decided we were going to splurge and this year buy theater tickets in Chicago to go see it. So we actually went there to Chicago production our anniversary weekend, which was so amazing. It was worth giving up all of the birthday, Christmas presents for the year because it was so good. So that's kind of the background of how I found it. For those of you who've been living under a rock and don't know, Alexander Hamilton was our first Secretary of Treasury. He was Washington's right-hand man and really had an amazing, amazing life. More so than I'd ever known. I remember hearing about Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr's famous fatal duel when I was in, I don't know, middle school, high school, and I thought, that's so stupid. Why would people fight over something, especially when they were both working for the same cause, even if they disagreed on something, and then have it end in death? Like, that just did not make sense to me. I thought it was stupid. I didn't understand why Aaron Burr was not immediately arrested and like taken out. And this really answered so many questions about that for me. First of all, okay, the characters that Lin-Manuel Miranda, he had read Chernoff's biography, and I will show you that in the thumbnail, I guess, of Alexander Hamilton, and thought, this guy is such a gangster. His story has so many elements of like the things that every musical or great theater or any book need to have. They have, he comes from the underbelly of society. He's an immigrant. He had no family, no money connections, and he really worked his way up to try and get somewhere in life. It has romance. It has kind of a love triangle and then also an affair. It has people who are competing for the same thing. It has the relationships that are complicated both in families with siblings, but also families just trying to impress your parents and trying to be good enough for your kids. So it has all of those elements as well, along with telling this amazing story of how America really started and kind of the struggles. I mean, I remember hearing about, Boston Tea Party and all that stuff growing up, but you never really think about how hard it was, how little supplies the Americans had, how much they really were going off their fight on energy and enthusiasm and surprises and trying to just make do with whatever they didn't have. It was really incredible to hear kind of that story as well. So I like that aspect of Hamilton. It really shows the whole young, scrappy, and hungry line as a country, but also as Hamilton. And he really represents kind of the underdog and how he can rise up even being fallible, which I really love. It encouraged me so much, especially politically right now. I needed to feel good about America. And this musical totally did that for me. It reminded me that we do have hard work in our bones, that we do have kind of the idea of smarts and talent really eventually winning the day, even if it's really hard. And I'm hoping we still have that gumption left in us. So there's that aspect. Okay, so before we went and saw the musical, I ended up picking up Hamilton the Revolution, which is not only all the lines from it, but also talks about how Miranda made the songs, how they did the musical, the different people who were a big part of it, how they did casting. And this right here, if you're going to go see the play, or if you're even thinking about liking it, pick this up. If you're not sure about even understanding rap, because I know some people didn't grow up with it, it's faster if you're not used to it. But reading the lyrics themselves are just beautiful. I mean, I put several different flags of things I wanted to share with you guys. But every time I read it, I think of something new and I look at it new. Even when we went and saw it on stage, there were lines that the actors said a little bit differently that just caught my attention that I never really appreciated before. And so it's always a learning experience, and you know how I like to learn. So that's another thing. And the characters, I never ever know which character I like the best, because as soon as a new one starts talking, I'm like, oh, but they really knocked it out of the park. I love the Hamilton character and how hardworking he is and how much fight he has left in him. I love Angelica Schuyler, who is his sister-in-law, who talks about wanting a revelation and not just a revolution. She was a woman born at the wrong time. She's very politically smart and savvy, but because she was a woman, she didn't have the same options open to explore that path. So I really appreciated that part of it. Eliza was just such a supportive partner and mother, and just watching her character. There were so many times during the play that I cried, let alone laughed. But Aaron Burr also really surprised me in the Chicago production. Both the Aaron Burr character and the Angelica characters knocked it out of the park. Aaron Burr, he's complicated. He's kind of the villain, and he even talks about referring to himself as the villain in your history. He was the villain for so long in my head, because I thought, why would you shoot somebody who you were working with? And then you see just every little thing that he does, that Hamilton is just one step faster and one step stronger and ahead of him. And it just eventually breaks him, and he can't handle it. And that's kind of what pushed him to the brink. Also, dueling in the 10 Duel Commandments, they talk about just how much of a part of culture dueling was. It wasn't like a shameful thing. It was just a normal part of our life, which I really just don't understand. But there was like this honor code to it and everything. So they talk about that a little bit. So it wasn't just, while it was looked down upon, it wouldn't have gotten you in jail like you would if you tried it these days. So there's that. A couple of the lines that I really wanted to stick out with you: the talk less, smile more. Aaron Burr's character is the careful, cautious one. He's always trying to, the next part of that line is, don't let them know what you're against or what you're for. He constantly is waiting to see how things will turn out to try and put down his cards. He was cautious. And in the end, it means that he doesn't take the bigger risks, so he doesn't give the bigger payoffs. That said, Hamilton flies off the seat of his pants all the time, is very, very impulsive, runs his mouth all the time, has to defend all of his beliefs right away. Washington is constantly kind of acting as his father figure, telling him, you need to, slow down. I need you to do this. Don't worry about my reputation. It can handle it. You're worrying too much. There's just such a stark difference between the two men. And it was interesting when I watched it with my husband, because honestly, he's a mix of the two. And I see that battle in him sometimes when he's trying to figure out if he should be more calculating and careful, or if he should be more of the risk taker. And I think a lot of us have that in us. I'm more impulsive. I'm Hamilton all the way. I'm not careful, which is not always good. But anyway, some other things that I wanted to share with you. This part right here, so the Angelica character, when she, in the Schuyler Sisters, her song Satisfied, she's talking about how he'll never be satisfied. And you realize just how smart she is, because as she meets Hamilton, she says she realizes 3 fundamental truths at the exact same time. How it's going to relate to her sister, as well as why is Hamilton approaching her in the first place. And it's just that high. It reminded me how, as a woman back then, you really had to be very perceptive of motivations. You had to be perceptive of people and what they were going to do with your reputation. I just really appreciated that aspect of it. So even just from a female perspective, it was just genius. Other things that I really loved was her line. She says, when she meets Thomas Jefferson, I'm gonna compel him to include women in the sequel. That was just so great. Anyway, okay, I'm all like blah, blah, blah. Anyway, another line that I really wanted to share with you was Hamilton, when he talks about, at the very beginning, he says, I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. What's it gonna get me in my sleep 7 feet ahead of me? If I see it coming, do I run or do I let it be? Is it like a beat without a melody? See, I never thought I'd live past 20. Where I come from, some get half as many. Ask anybody why we live in fast, and we laugh, reach for a flask. We have to make this moment last. That's plenty. And I just, from even just a social justice perspective, Hamilton fits, the musical fits in with our society so well, because there's so many people who, yeah, where they come from, they're not expected to live past a certain age or get so far. There's so many things that are stopping that. And so it's easy for people in a place of privilege to say, why are they, being so reckless? But they're being what we might consider reckless or living fast because they know they only have a little bit of time. It reminded me of Jesmyn Ward's book, Men We Reaped. And she talks about the men in her life and how they didn't expect to live long. They lived as though part of them had already died because they knew it was coming. And that just, burned in my brain as I'm listening to it, because it's so true. Other things that I really loved, the Immigrants, We Get the Job Done song. Not only that on the mixtape, but the line when they said it in the musical, everybody just cheered, and it made my heart happy. So that in general. Another part was, King George, his character is just great. My boys love singing the songs with me, and several points in the musical, King George comes out and talks about, first he's saying, you'll be back, like, don't go away from me. It's almost like a breakup song. He's like, you don't know what you're missing. And then later on it says, what comes next? And he says, you've been freed. You know how hard it is to lead. You're on your own. Awesome. Wow. Do you have a clue what happens now? Oceans rise, empires fall. It's much harder when it's all your call. And it kind of gives a little bit of it shows you how much we were kind of trying to figure it out while we were doing it at the same time. And I think we're at that point in our history where we're all trying to figure it out again. So I think it was just a really good encouragement for that. Another thing that was just the most perfect song is Dear Theodosia. Dear Theodosia is a song that is sung between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton to their new babies. And the entire song is exactly perfect, but it's talking about how neither of them had parents to kind of model their life after, but they are trying to do their best for their kid. And I just cry every time I hear it, but it's we'll bleed and we'll fight for you, we'll make it right for you. If we lay a strong enough foundation, we'll pass it on to you. We'll give the world to you and you'll blow us all away. Someday, someday, yeah, you'll blow us all away. Someday, someday. I want to do like a big piece of art for the wall like that, because it's just the sweetest. And it's talking about, I'll make a million mistakes is one of the lines in there. I'll do whatever it takes. And that's how parenting is, making a million mistakes and trying to do whatever it takes. So that's another thing that I love about it. And then finally, there's 2 more songs that I want to talk about. First of all, the It's Quiet Uptown is a song about having to face marital struggles together when it's like the worst grief of losing a child, and what that does to an already strained relationship, and how they're trying to work it out. And it's sung by the company around them, saying, you know, you don't know what they're going through. It's the worst thing anybody's having to go through. Give them some grace, kind of. And if you read the Revolution book, I don't want to ruin anything of it, but it relates to some of the real life people that worked on Hamilton, and how that song really affected them, which just made me bawl my eyes out while I was reading it. So that's another one that's just like shows you just the grief of regular life, and trying to go on when you don't know how to go on together. The other things I wanted to talk about, The World Was Wide Enough. Aaron Burr sings that towards the end, just saying, I didn't realize that both viewpoints could exist, and that the world was big enough for both of them, not just him or not just Hamilton, but the world really needed both of them, and the balance that we bring. And I think that is so necessary right now in our life today, to realize that we need more balance. We don't need one viewpoint or the other. We need both together. Diversity is what makes us so strong. The last thing I wanted to say, there's so many things I wanted to say. The cabinet battles in here. So there are three different cabinet battles where you kind of watch the political action of forming a nation go down, and they do them as rap battles. And if you're familiar with rap battles, it's when one person gets up and kind of throws it down, a challenge in a rap version, and then another person comes back and challenges with a rap battle. Get off the table. I will be there in 1 second. I will be there in 1 second. No. So the rap battles was just, I think everybody politically should do those these days, and not just, it would make things better. I don't know. We're watching enough political drama. Might as well add a beat to it. Yes. Hamilton, if you are not convinced at all, just try it, because I laughed so many times, cried so many times, had my breath taken away. It reminded me about the good that we can be together, and I really needed that. And it reminded me that like working hard really does pay off, even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes. You might be leaving a legacy that you have no idea about, and for that, Hamilton wins all the awards in my book, and it is my favorite album, I think, of all time. I would listen to this thing till the cows come home. I quote it way too much. My kids are starting to roll their eyes, and my husband's definitely been rolling his eyes at me, but go ahead and give it a shot if you haven't. If you have questions about Hamilton, or you've read the Hamilton Revolution book, or have seen it, I would love to discuss it in the comments. And that's all for now. I'll talk to you later. Bye.